1 minute early.
Wow.
We'll give people a chance to trickle in, and we're gonna see if I can freaking bring this up on my laptop. We are live. We should see. We got 2 people in already. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Can we bring up this live stream and look at the comments on my laptop? We're gonna see comments pop up here. Let's see, top chat, live chat. Yeah, live chat. Let's see, live control room. Hello, everybody. The stream will start. It's technically started now.
Look at it filling up. Holy cow.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Do something a little different tonight. We'll talk more about that. Live dashboard, yes. Can I go to the live dashboard? So, as you can tell, I'm not at home. I'm at this guy's house. This is Ahren Ciotti.
What's up, everybody?
Did I say your name correctly?
You did.
It's only taken me like a year to learn to say
That's
your
true.
name correctly. And
You and everybody else.
we're gonna be. I'm in Atlanta for reasons, and he also lives in Atlanta now. And I was like, oh, I'll do my live stream from his house. So I forced my way into his home. I made him buy me pizza, and I'm drinking his beer. And we're going to do a Q&A, and we're going to be talking about micros, because that's the area that you specialize in, and I don't. So, but before we do that, because the stream is a little, I didn't have the event up. So we're going to give people a little bit of time, just a couple minutes to sort of trickle in before we get going. And I'm going to try to see if I can get the stream up, like, on my computer so I can see your comments on the computer. So, hello. You're going to just sit there for a minute and chat. Ahren, if you see any chats pop up,
Yeah.
you can respond to them or whatever.
We're drinking Shiner Bock.
Yeah, good. That's what everyone always wants to know is
Yep.
what we're drinking.
That's why I brought the bottles in. I knew that would be a hot topic.
Mm-hmm.
Budswell. Nice, Oliver. Looks like a Shiner. Yeah, Jay Scales, you got it.
There we go.
There it
If I
is.
go here, please use the YouTube app on your mobile device to manage the stream. That's fine.
There's always a huge delay for me.
I know, but I just want to see the chat. Boom, here we go. Viewer activity, got it. I just want to be able to see the chat on my laptop so I don't have to squint at the phone. And I'm also,
Sweet.
there we go. Oh yeah. See, am I going to fly Steel Squad this time in Atlanta? Asks amazing Ricardo. Ricardo, I met the guys yesterday and flew with them, but Steele did not make it out by the time I had to go, so I did not get to fly his quad. I would love to fly his quad, just to, who wouldn't, right? Just to find out. But
I have a slam deal and you can fly. I just gotta get back from New Jersey.
that's Seal, so glad to catch live. Welcome at Seal. Fiozoni, FPV, you're in the UK, Sweden, you guys. I apologize to the Europeans for canceling your stream yesterday. I was driving to Atlanta and I couldn't do it. And the deal was I was going to drive to Atlanta after the stream and be like, okay, but then we wouldn't have been able to fly the office park because we would have had to fly on Monday. And I was like, well, I really want to fly the office park. So I was like, screw the Europeans.
You gotta do it. You gotta do it.
Yeah. So.
They'll understand. You guys understand, right?
Understand.
You want to see that play
They're
video.
fine. They're fine. Viper FBU wore this shirt yesterday. Hello, Kim Ratcliffe from Australia. Beers with Bardwell. That's right, Hectic FPV. It's beers with Bardwell. Where's Botgrinder? I'm eating pizza because I haven't had dinner yet. So it's a very informal stream. So
Thanks,
Ken,
Guillermo.
Ken Lipper, your comment is not going to go through because it is political in nature. I try to keep politics out of my. I see your comment, Ken. You're very clever, but I'm not going to approve that comment. So I didn't know Infamous FPV. They bought the pizza. I was like, I can get the pizza. They already had dinner. They're not even eating the pizza. They were like, here, no, let us get it. They're very nice hosts. They're very, very nice hosts.
What can I say? We're adults. 38 years old, you learn a thing or two.
All right. So, Supercell FPV. Oh, thank you for reminding me. I should get into the Discord too. Good point. Let me do that. Shamer, I'm in the Discord. Yes, sir. The problem is I'm on my laptop, so I don't have as much screen real estate as I normally do at home. But okay, here we go. I got it up. And I will be so. In case you're new here, I got to get back in my groove because I'm not at home. It's a Q&A live stream, and we're going to be doing normal Q&A. You guys will ask questions, and I'll try to answer. But I want to grill this guy, and I was going to interview you and just make a video out of it.
Cool.
But instead, I was like, "Oh, let's just do it as a live stream and let everybody in it."
We'll practice.
Right. We'll do the real interview later because you fly micros exclusively?
No.
Not exclusively.
Yeah.
A lot though. You fly micros a lot.
For a year and a half, pretty much exclusively.
And I know you because at Quad Camp in Georgia, in Lawrenceville, you were the micro pilot who power looped the table.
Yep.
So I think of you as a micro guy.
Don't forget the Matty flip. Come on.
Are you Matty? You Matty the table?
Yeah.
That was the trick, right?
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
a mat. Oh, I'm sorry. I said power
It was
loop.
both. No, it was both.
Yes.
I did the power loop, and then I said, "You guys want to see me Matty it?"
And you did.
And the whole room emptied out.
Yeah. We didn't want to be anywhere near that. But so micros are huge. Like micros started getting big, and I was like, who knows? But I think micros are more popular even maybe than 5 inches now.
Yeah, this year's been wild. This year's
Why
been
are they so
completely
popular?
Opposite. I think people are kind of starting to see the hidden benefits that it's easy to kind of miss. For me, getting started in the hobby, I got started in the hobby when I was actually unemployed, so it had to be cheap. And that was why I gravitated towards micros. $100 Baby Hawk, the original white one, $100 QX7, and $60 box goggles. Charger batteries got me up in the air and kept me in the air for a long time.
So they're affordable, obviously.
And a lot of new people. So, I mean, it's super... And just being able to fly them, in your parking lot and in your little park that you can walk to.
So they're
huge.
affordable. You can fly them anywhere, especially as regulations have gotten more and more restrictive.
For sure.
In places where there's a hard 250-gram limit, which thankfully we don't have yet. And I apologize for talking with my mouth full. This is a very informal stream. So unprofessional. And then, and it used to be you had to give up a lot in terms of performance.
For sure.
That original Baby Hawk flew very well for what it was, but didn't fly good in sort of an absolute sense.
Sure.
But now we got little guys like this. What is this little guy? This
So that's a 3-inch build, roundabout 160 grams all up with a 4S 450, 3+ minutes all day. And I actually let a whole bunch of the guys a couple weeks ago at the Get FPV meetup fly that, and every single one of them said it felt exactly like a 5-inch.
Yeah.
And that's such a weird benchmark, but because it doesn't make sense. But in a smaller spot, what people fail to realize is with micros, you want to scale down your flying. Like every specific tool for a specific job, right? 5-inch rig will rip across a football field like it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
A micro won't.
Right.
It just doesn't have the horsepower to push the air.
Right.
But that's not the point of a micro, right? In a micro, you can go into your backyard, into a parking lot, and you can turn that small space into a big space.
That's a very good point. Joseph Dawson wants to know how heavy is it with a 4S? How heavy is it with your battery?
160 grams all up, 4S 450, 3 minutes of runtime, almost 10 to 1 power to weight.
10, yeah. And I think your point about flying it in the right location is very, very good, because if you take it to like a football field, it will not feel fast.
Yep.
But at the same token, if you take a tiny whoop and you fly it in your house, it feels really fast. So you know. But as far as sort of handling goes and capability to do acro, I've seen people fly acros with tiny whoops, and I've tried it, and the physics are so different.
Yep.
I find it really difficult.
Yeah.
But these little guys fly enough like a 5-inch that
Right.
I think you don't have to sort of retrain your brain around the physics as much.
You just have
And
to
they fly really well.
shrink. You just have to shrink your world down a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Think like Bug's Life. I don't know. Toy Story. Like that's what your world needs to become. Instead of, a 10-story building, you can fly a 4-story building, and it feels like, you're just climbing up the side of it forever. And that's also why I tend to build micros on the lower side of the power. There's a lot of racing motors and racing setups that make big power for racing built micros, but
Right.
for me it's about freestyle, and that's a different build, just like it is with 5-inch rigs. And I tend to go towards less power, more throttle resolution, so that, again, when I'm at a small spot, the right location for that rig, it's going to work in that small spot. I don't want it to leap up that 4-story building
Right.
in a tiny throttle blip.
Metal Dirt and Skin FPV says if anyone asks if they should get a toothpick, the answer is no. They should get 3. Okay. Plummet FPV points out the biggest issue with micros is getting high def footage for posting. For flying, they're badass. Now you've got a Caddx Tarsier on here, right?
Yeah. So I've been kind of holding back putting up any footage from this setup, mainly because the Tarsier is, in my opinion, not a finished product, as we see a lot in FPV, right? Version 1 of something can be a little bit rough, and then they get a lot of feedback, and version 2 is great. We saw that with the RunCam splits, and the Tarsier, in my opinion, is there right now. It's version 1. I don't necessarily want to make a bunch of noise about it and have people run out and buy it, because I'm sure a version 2 is coming, and there are some real problems.
Which of the split style, like 20mm cameras, do you think is? Do you have an opinion on one that might be in version 2?
The version 2 of this and RunCam just announced a dual lens setup. That's the answer. I mean, hands down.
You feel like the dual lens is the dual lens mandatory?
Absolutely mandatory.
Okay.
Essentially, the way all the other non-dual lenses work is they have one sensor. It's an HD sensor. For the FPV feed, they crop in on that sensor.
Right.
So if the HD sensor has 160, 170 field of view, your FPV cam has 120. And I have a real hard time flying with narrow field of view. I actually go the other way.
That's interesting, because when I think about like the Caddx Tarsier, and in case anybody out there is not familiar, it's got 2 lenses, 2 sensors. One is a regular FPV camera, analog, and one is for high def recording. And I always thought of it as the latency being the issue, because all of the high def split style cameras have higher than desirable latency. But the field of view, I actually hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, and the latency is actually not that bad on the splits,
right?
As long as you're using a fast memory card, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But the latency is definitely an issue.
They get the field of view there as well. That's
but the
really
field of view was what really killed it for me. Yeah, that's why I could never really get comfortable on the split or the turtle.
Nick Burns, Nick Burns, for a live stream about micros, to have somebody like Nick Burns in here.
Yeah.
Nick Burns is the king of micros. No offense. He is great at tuning, and he does a lot of micro content. Oh, coming for you, Nick.
Yeah, Nick and I are good friends. He's a great guy.
So I'm gonna call out a super chat. And by the way, you guys, this is a normal live stream. So if you want to, I can't show you my. I'm not gonna pick the phone up. I was gonna, but I can't switch over to my screen. Alex is not here this week to run my screens for me. But if you want to make sure your question gets called out, make sure we get to it. Hit that $sign down below. Make a super chat, and I will definitely get to it. I'm also monitoring the Discord, where my patrons can join my Discord server. The usual stuff. We won't go too far. Brian Chambers, thank you for $10. Just saying thank you and just give me $20 or $10. So thank you, Brian. No question now. Now Michael Torres wants to know best whoop hands down. Now I wonder, before you answer, I wonder what Michael Torres means, because he says best whoop. Do you literally mean do you mean an Inductrix based tiny whoop? Do you mean, does it have to be brushless, or is it brushed? What is a whoop? I don't know.
I used to know.
Yeah,
I don't know anymore.
It's expanded.
Yeah.
We've got
the bigger, the 75 mil props. Now you can fly them outside, which I don't understand, but I guess
brushed. Are you with Newbie Drone about the magic of brushed motors? No.
Neither are they. They're making brushless motors now.
For the longest time, Newbie Drone has insisted that they just like brushed motors. I don't know. I think
different.
It's
not better in any way, though.
Yeah. Brushless motors, I think, are the way to go.
It's definitely different, though. I mean, you can wax nostalgic about whoops, right?
I mean, I do enjoy. Here's the analogy I like to make: is that the original sort of tiny whoop? It's kind of like a VW Bug from the '70s.
Totally.
It's cute. It's easy to work on. Yeah. And they fly. They have a certain way of flying. People love them, but if what you want is something that flies the best, it's probably not going to be brush motors.
It's swinging with a weighted bat for learning to use yaw, though.
Yeah.
With the whoops, since you don't get any up and down, really, right? You don't get any throw. You don't get much up and down movement. You replace that with yaw, and you get really good at using yaw. SR13 FPV is arguably the best whoop freestyle pilot in the world. I mean, it's all about yaw with him. It's so cool to watch.
UAV Tech's in the chat. I have you on, and all of a sudden I got Nick Burns and UAV Tech in the chat. Apparently this one has a big drop. People are wanting to know about your shirt. Can you show people your shirt real quick?
Only the
Just what would Jeremy?
Is it backwards?
What would Jeremy Clarkson do? Yeah, I think it may be reversing.
it. Okay. That would make it confusing.
So here's what I want to get into, because you and I are going to do a 3-inch build. I say you and I. You're helping. I mean, you're welcome to come help me build it, but
cool.
I want to get more. I want to acknowledge that micros are definitely where the hobby is going. I like flying. I'm the kind of guy who would just fly one quad all the time and never branch out. And I think it's good because it means I'm fairly resistant to the hype train.
Yeah.
When a new product comes out and everybody's excited about it, no matter how good it is, I'm annoyed. And I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
But I feel like micros, I mean, they're too important now, too significant to norm.
And if you could only have one, it would have to be a micro.
Why is that?
I mean, if you could only ever have one quad forever, it's got to be something that's not obnoxiously loud and not gonna get you kicked out of places, right?
I guess that depends where you live. Maybe.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I fly 5-inch more than I do micros, but that's because a lot of the spots that I've found are for that, and because they make fun noises. And it is great to carry a GoPro session, but I mean, this rig with the Tarsier is almost there.
Yeah.
It is almost to the point where I'll think about backing off of 5-inch and building more micros again.
Wow. So one of the questions I saw earlier in the chat was, if somebody's interested in getting a micro, should they buy a ready to fly or should they build their own? Ready to flies are pretty good.
And that's where I started. So my thought process was, if I buy the ready to fly, I can see where all the wires go, and then if I break it, I'll repair it. I'll know how to repair it because it'll already be put together.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think that's true, but I also think that there's enough this was 2 and a bit years ago, so there wasn't quite as much of a tutorial presence on YouTube. Nowadays, I don't know. I mean, you can very easily go through or Rotorites or any number of different multi-part 2, 3, 4 hour step-by-step tutorials and build one of these things.
Yeah.
And you'll get.
I don't have a micro tutorial yet, by the way. This is what I'm going to do. So I have to say, for a beginner, if it's your first build, I feel like the micros, I am so annoyed at working on them. They're so small and everything is so fiddly.
Yeah.
I almost feel like a great big wide open frame with a normal 36mm flight controller. I feel like that has some advantages in terms of being easier to build.
I'll agree with that because I blew up quite a few ESCs learning how to solder. Especially, I mean, somebody that doesn't know, not even somebody that doesn't know how to solder, somebody that's not really good at soldering is going to have a heck of a time with scratch building a micro. I'll flip that and say, that's what I did, and it taught me how to solder really well. So eventually, when I built a 5-inch, it was a joke.
That's true.
But, I mean, I don't know. I would kind of rather have built something easier, not wasted the money, bridging ESCs and stuff like that. So, I don't know. There's no wrong answers, but...
We still haven't answered the question, though. Somebody who is getting ready to buy, should they build their own, or should they get ready to fly? I mean, if you had to give an answer, what should they do the first time out?
I'm ready to fly. I'll tell you why.
That's what I was going to say. Okay, tell me why, and then I'll see if we agree.
I mean, there's a million, not a million, but there's plenty of reasons why. But what swung me just now, the last thing I thought of was, right before I had this thought, I thought, well, if you scratch build it with the right parts list, which is easy to come up with, right? Lots of YouTube content with it listed in the description. Message me, I will tell you everything you need to know. You won't know that.
You're taking my recipe for success.
Right?
No, I'm not joking. Message me, I'll help you.
When you're new like that, you will not notice. You will not notice the difference between 1106s and 1304s. It took me at least a year, and that was a year of 5 to 10 batteries a day, every single day. No excuses. It took me that long to be able to tell that difference. So. To get somebody up in the air and not have them get frustrated and quit while they're trying to scratch build a micro. Yeah.
I feel the same way. I think that the ready to flies in the 5-inch class are good, but you really pay a premium for them.
Hawk 5's pretty good though, right?
Hawk 5's very
What's
good.
that cost? 3.
I mean, maybe not as much of a premium. It feels like you can always build it cheaper than you could buy it, and whereas the micros, I feel like the micros are they're just as good as what you would build. And I'm not sure. Do you think there's as much of a premium in the micro class?
There is. Yeah, the performance difference for freestyle, I will say this. All right, for racing, I don't think this is true, because it's not as specific of a combination, and most of the parts for micros are geared towards racing, so it's easy to get that right. But to build a freestyle micro in the way that I personally like to fly it and think it makes sense to fly them, there's not a ready to fly that's perfect. But again, when you're new, you're not going to know that. And you're going to learn about that as you fly more and more and more. And then when you go to the right size motors for the prop that can control it properly, for example, and you've got a couple thousand batteries that you've flown already, you'll be able to tell that difference. And so it's, I don't know, swing with a weighted bat even. You can think about it in that same way, right? You get something that's not ideal, but you make it work. It makes you work harder. You become a better pilot.
I just worry that somebody who's starting out would get really frustrated and turned off and quit.
I would have.
And the barrier to entry on a 5-inch, I mean, you can get a really, really decent 2.5-inch ready to fly for $100.
Yep.
Whereas the barrier to entry for a really, really decent 5-inch is more like 250, maybe $280.
Yep.
And so you're more motivated, I think, to build with a 5-inch because you save a little more money.
Yep. Whereas
on the 3 inches, maybe you save percentage-wise the same amount of money,
sure,
but it's only $20 cheaper just to build it yourself, so you may as well buy it.
Yeah, and I personally, I cannot actually imagine starting this hobby off with a 5-inch rig. I can't imagine that responsibility of something that's 600 plus grams wailing through the sky at 80 miles an hour. I really can't. I mean, thinking back to the stupid things that I did right when I was new and just didn't know better, I can't imagine if I'd done those stupid things with something that's 600 instead of 160.
Nick Burns points out in the chat, total cost of ownership is lower. Cheaper batteries.
And the batteries are weirdly a lot more resilient.
Yeah.
The micro batteries never die. It's incredible.
Yeah. Well, then until you get down to the little whoop batteries, then they just die all the time. So I don't know.
We're
We're in the sweet spot, I guess.
Yeah, like a 4S450, you can discharge that down to 2.5 volts over and over and over again, and magically it just never dies.
Somebody in the Discord, and I didn't catch who, I can't find the message, but they said that you should buy it ready to fly and then soup it up.
There you go. That's what I did.
I'm
exactly
not sure.
What I did.
I'm not sure I agree with that though, because there was somebody in the Discord who bought an Emax Tiny Hawk Freestyle, and then they added like a micro VTX to it, and they changed the camera out. And by the time you've done that, now you've taken a really good $100 ready to fly, and you've turned it into an even better $160. But you could have probably spent that $160 on a whole different quad and done better.
Well, and that's what you do, though, right? That's exactly what I did. I ended up replacing everything, and then I went, oh, I'll buy another frame.
Right.
I bought another frame, and I took all the Baby Hawk parts, and I built a non-Baby Hawk Baby Hawk.
And
so, I mean, it's... I don't think there's a wrong answer in that respect. I think souping it up, like for me, I just didn't have the money. I had $10 a week, $15 a week that I could spend. So I'd get a new VTX. Wow,
right,
okay,
$15 here, $15 there.
Yep, and it was just this sequential thing versus if I'd saved my money, right, I would have had to wait 2 months and then I would have thumped it all down at the same time. Whereas I did it piecemeal.
The other thing I wonder is that a lot of time, I think that like a 5-inch, if you say the weight of a 5-inch, it could be anywhere from 550 to, let's say, maybe even 500 to 700 grams. And it'll fly different, but it'll fly okay. Whereas I think these micros have a much smaller tuning envelope and weight envelope.
Yeah.
If you take something like a Emax Tiny Hawk Freestyle and then you start adding even just like 10 or 15 grams to it, it's going to fly way different and maybe fly way worse.
Yeah, you have to, with micros, you have to get your head out of like grams difference and start thinking about percentage difference, right? And with motors, this is so incredibly evident. So you've got a 2306 and a 2207, right, in 5-inch world. Those are the two most popular sizes. 23 width stator to 22 width stator. It's like a 4% difference.
Okay. You
go down to a micro, you look at like an 1106 motor versus what I went to was a 1304. 11 to 13, that's almost a 20%. It's a little bit less than a 20% change. That's a huge change, and everything is like that, right? You put a battery strap on a micro that has a metal buckle, and it gains a couple grams. That can be a 5% weight gain.
When I reviewed the Luminaire Axie micro antenna, Whoop pilots. I said,
Yep.
you can put this on your Whoop. And Whoop pilot said, it's too heavy. And I said, what do you mean? It's 2 grams. And they said, yeah, but my whole quad is 20 grams.
Yep.
So you're adding 10% of the weight. I was like, oh, if I added 60 grams to my 5-inch, I
Yep.
would. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Early on in micro days on one of the on the big micro Facebook group, I got called by a couple people a weight Nazi for doing things like using plastic standoffs instead of metal ones, and just cutting all these little corners for a gram or
Yeah.
a gram and a half or 2 grams. Coming from motorsports, there's a saying: ounces make grams. When you're lightening up a
true.
car, every single little thing you remove 100 little things, and that's the equivalent of.
And that's so much more true on these little guys. I mean, it's also true on the 5 inches, but the 5 inches you have enough power, and percentage-wise,
Yeah.
taking off a gram or 2 grams here is not that much. On these little guys, globbing on a bunch of hot glue that'll add 5 or 6 grams. That's yeah.
For sure.
Some people are asking in the chat about specific quads. I see the Sailfly coming up a lot. Do you have an opinion about the Sailfly?
I
No?
haven't seen it.
Me neither, okay. So, well, at least we acknowledge the question.
I don't have great knowledge of ready to flies.
Yeah,
I've
you're a
been in it
builder.
too long. I'm a builder. Yeah,
All right.
I've been in it too long. I'm looking for something. I'm looking for my build to be very, very, very specific. And they don't build freestyle micros yet.
He means builds. All right, let's talk about building.
Sailfly builds.
No. Milos in the Discord says, I have some Emax 1108 motors, 4500 kV. He said, what kind of builds are those good for? And I was confused, but I think he meant builds. What would you use an Emax 1108 4500 kV for? You got an opinion?
Racing only. My opinion on
Well,
micro
hang on,
motors
back up for a second.
yeah.
Like, do you want to talk about like what prop, what voltage, and what weight? Or do you want to just go straight into racing? Feels like maybe we skipped a step.
Yeah, we did. So an 1108, an '08 stator will spin a 2.5-inch prop, maybe a 3-inch, but I would not do that. Not enough stator width to really control a 3-inch prop.
Okay.
So I would say 2 or 2.5-inch prop. What was the KV?
You said 4500 kV?
4500 on a 2.5-inch prop. Run that on 4S. On a 2-inch prop, you'd actually probably want to go up to 5S on that.
Interesting.
I don't know if they'd hold up to it, but you would need that kind
Yeah,
of
so
RPM.
the bigger and this is true of all quads, big quads, little quads. The bigger the prop, the lower the kV, or the lower the RPM you want.
Right.
So the lower the kV or the lower the battery voltage. The smaller the prop, the higher you can and in fact need to go,
Yeah, you got to spin it.
because with a smaller prop you have to spin it faster to make thrust.
Yeah.
And so there's this balance between battery voltage, kV, and prop size. It's kind of a triangle, but anyway.
And when you're doing that too, you want to remember that that's saying is that you're talking about the same rig, the same weight rig,
Right.
Like if you're building 2 rigs, and one of them is going to be a little heavier, well, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But on the same rig, if you want to haul the same amount of weight, if you're looking between a 2-inch prop and a 2.5-inch prop, you have to spin the hell out of that 2-inch prop. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said you would use that motor for racing. Why would you use that motor for racing and like not freestyle?
Yeah. So early on, there were only really 11.0 something series motors for micros, and it was pretty heavily 2-inch props. Then 2.5-inch props came around, and I never really liked the way those micro motors felt on a 2.5-inch prop. And then 3-inch props started popping.
Well,
up.
What didn't you like about it?
So 3-inch props really made me understand it.
Okay.
The 11 millimeter wide stator just doesn't have the instantaneous grunt to control those bigger props. As the props get bigger, they get heavier. The mass moves out farther. It's harder to spin.
You need more torque. I think
More
is
torque,
what I'm hearing.
right? Yep. A longer lever is the way I think about it. Again, coming back to motorsports. So an 11 series motor, in my opinion, 1108. That's enough stator where it can spin that 2.5-inch
The
prop.
taller stator.
And with racing, bounce back and stuff like that, and prop wash prop wash is important, but bounce back is not important, for example.
Because you're not doing flips or rolls
Right.
at high. You're not
Right.
running 1,300 degrees per second.
And more power
For racing.
is more important. So more stator height totally makes sense there. But if we started to talk about like a freestyle quad, a 2.5-inch prop, I would never run an 11.0
I see.
anything motor. It would be a 13 or a 14 mil wide stator motor, because I've just found that they control the 2.5-inch or
So-
3-inch prop better.
Some people say, and this is a vast oversimplification, I'm sure, But some people say that the wider motors have more torque, and the taller motors have more top end.
Yep.
And that's a generalization that has a little bit of truth to it. It's not untrue, but it's incomplete. Let's say that.
Yeah.
So
for me at least, it's a feel thing. I can feel that. I don't know if thrust charts back it up, but when I fly a 2207, it feels like a big single turbo Supra. When I fly my 2306s, they feel like a more muscly kind of V8, naturally aspirated kind of setup.
More low end.
Yep.
Now there are questions coming in the chat about recommended sort of KV range and motor for 2S and 3S.
Yeah.
The challenge there is that there's three variables. There's your prop size, your battery voltage, and your motor KV, and your motor size. So you can't exactly say this KV for this prop, because then you're like, well, what battery voltage are we using?
Right.
So
I used to bring it all back to 2S. I used to put everything in my head in terms of 2S, and I would say like, okay, the equivalent of 10,000 kV at 2S. So that's an easy example, right? So 2S 10,000 kV, cut that kV in half, 5,000 kV for 4S. That's the same
that's
total
really good.
RPM.
Do you know I do that? I do that with 4S because that's what I'm most familiar with.
Up to 6.
4S 2400 kV is kind of the baseline.
Yep.
And then if you ask me, is this KV too high for 6S?
Yep.
I'll translate it back to 4S,
Yep.
and kind of that's very interesting.
So I flew 2S
So
for
your
my first
baseline-
year. So my baseline was 2S.
2S 10,000 kV is kind of like your baseline.
That was my baseline for like a 2.5-inch prop, and then so I would say, okay, if I wanted to go 2-inch prop, I got to spend more than that. If I want to go 3-inch prop, I can spend a little bit less than that. So for example, my builds now are 4,000 kV 4S on a 3-inch prop, but my 2.5-inch builds are 5,000 kV 4S on the 2.5-inch prop.
That's really good.
That up.
That's gold. That's gold, you guys out there. 2S. I'm gonna remember that, and I'm gonna have to remember to attribute you.
Yeah.
2S 10,000 kV.
It's a nice round number.
It is.
Right.
And you can easily do the math on 10,000 kV to take it up or down.
Yep.
That's really nice.
It saves from having to do the insane math to generate the RPMs, which I've never cared to learn.
Now let me look. Now, see, the problem with having a guest on this is that I ignore the chat and just talk to him. So let me just check the chat. Ghost Branch FPV says 1108 4500 kV on 5S. Won't that end up as a fireball?
Say it again. 1108.
1108 4500 kV on 5S. Won't that end up as a fireball?
Well, the only thing it has going for it is it's a 2-inch prop.
Right.
It might. It very well might. That being said, I've spun micromotors up to like if they're rated from the factory at like 2S to 3S, I've run them on 5S before and been fine in a freestyle setting.
It's really just the RPM that matters.
Right.
The motor doesn't. It's not like if you got an ESC and the FETs are rated for 25 volts, and if you run them on 40 volts, I've screwed up the math entirely. Sorry. The FETs are rated for 16 volts, and if you run them on 25 volts, they just pop.
Right.
A motor, the voltage rating relates to the RPM that it makes. But if you drive the motor with a higher voltage but a lower throttle, it'll be okay.
Yep.
It'll probably be okay.
And just, I mean, if as long as the ESC is not going to blow in, plug it up, plug it in, hover it, bring it down, check the motor heat. Okay, it's fine. Take it back up, run it up the street, run it back, check the motors. I mean, if the motors aren't getting boiling hot, you're fine.
I'm gonna also crack the other bit.
Yeah.
Random Chaos in the chat. Random Chaos is Jeff Simpson, our local Knoxville race director.
Yeah.
And
Jeff
beat me. We flew the 2019 MultiGP qualifier. Jeff flies micros.
Cheers.
Thank you. Anybody else out there? Crack one. Jeff flew a 2.5-inch micro for the MultiGP qualifier, and he beat me.
It's because your yard's too small.
It's because he's a great pilot, and also I didn't practice very much. But Jeff points out he much prefers a slightly lower KV to save batteries and increase flight time.
Yeah, for sure.
But he's more of a racer. Interestingly, Evan Turner set it is currently the record for fastest 3 laps. He said, what's that? No, with a 5-inch, with his race rate. He was running an 80% throttle cut to that day. He swears you race faster with an 80% throttle cut. I think that's only true if you're Evan Turner.
That's pretty awesome.
But that kind of backs up Jeff's point about maybe taking the KV down a little.
Yeah, did we go too far?
How often are you at full throttle?
Yeah, that's true.
Quadcopter points out the Trashcan 2S is 15,000 kV motors. What's the deal with that?
There you go. Yeah, I mean the motors
Those are
will do
small
it.
props, right?
Tiny little props, little like 1.4 inch, I guess they are, maybe 1.3. So yeah, but I mean the motors will do it, right? The bells are balanced. The stator is not what's moving. The bell is what's moving, and they're strong. I've yet to see a bell blow up from too much RPM.
Redbeard the pilot. Thank you for $5 in the super chat. Redbeard wants to know the best simulator for micro experience. What do you think? Do you have an opinion?
I used to. It used to be Velocidrone a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And then they had an update which kind of messed up the micro physics, in my opinion. And then Liftoff was pretty good, and then I stopped flying sims.
Have you ever flown Rotor Rush?
No.
Rotor Rush is a simulator. A lot of people. I assume it's.
Oh, that's the really pretty one, right?
I think it's. I'm not sure.
The graphics are gorgeous, I think.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I think they're still out there. I haven't heard about them like going under or anything. They have a whoop focused simulator.
Right. Jesse Perkins was working with them, I think.
Yeah. So I mean I can't vouch for it, but I can say they specifically released a simulator aiming at whoops.
Right.
So should check out Rotor Rush, maybe.
Basically, if you're in a sim, turn the drag all the way up, because you're simulating the fact that these don't have enough horsepower to push air, right? And then you turn the weight all the way down, you turn the thrust all the way down.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was as close as I could get it. At one point, I put a throttle curve in my Tyrannus because I'm out of my mind.
It is really different. Like most of the time on a simulator, I would say, just fly it. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. But the experience of flying a micro, because they're so light, they decelerate so fast because they have no weight to push through the air.
Right.
Like, are you trying to do like a fling, and instead of flinging, as soon as you drop the throttle, it just bleh.
Yeah, you can't do flings with. You basically can't turn 180 and have the idle pushing the other way.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to do a fling, the thrust has to be at least 90 degrees to the direction of travel to get any kind of fling. If you throw it all the way around, if you're coming this way and you fling it all the way around like this, a micro is gonna stop real fast. You want to bring it around and throw it like that, or any axis like this.
Or if you're gonna pop over something, you gotta stay on the throttle and fly through it.
Yep.
You can't just pop the throttle and go whee.
Yep. Different flying style, more accurate when you kind of think about it.
Metal Dirtskin, thank you for $5 in the super chat. Can you say more about? And this is actually going to get into, because I want to talk about the 3-inch build that we're going to do.
Sure.
Can you say more about motor prop combinations you like and which you don't like for 2S, 3S, and so on? So let's start with your favorite motor and prop combo for 2S, 3S, 4S, and up.
So I can't wrap my brain around doing it by 2S, 3S, 4S. I have to do it by prop size.
Okay.
And I think that's a way better analog anyway. So let's throw 2S, 3S, 4S out of the window, because all that matters there is KV. I tend to gravitate towards 4S because less sag, less heat in the batteries. But you can take a 2S 10,000 kV motor and put it on this rig versus a 4S on a 5,000 kV motor, and they're turning the same RPM. They should turn roughly the same thrust, right?
Roughly.
So throw battery voltage out the window, because we can just fix that with KV. And for me, again, prop size. 2-inch props, I think they are best for an 11.0 something motor. 11.04, 11.05 is my personal favorite for freestyle and for throttle resolution. When you get into 11.06 and 7 and 8, I think there's too much stator, and you get this humongous spike of power, and you lose a lot of throttle resolution.
That's
so
interesting.
For me, 11.03, 11.04, 11.05, more 11.04, 11.05 for a 2-inch prop.
Okay.
2.5-inch prop. The smallest I go is 13.04. RCX makes a brilliant $9 per motor.
RCX, that's myrcmart.com sells those.
Yep.
Myrcmart.com.
Yeah, $9 motor, 13.04, 5,000 kV. It is the best I've found in terms of durability, cost, everything else together for a 2.5-inch prop. If you want a little more power, there's 14.04s, there's 13.06s, but I think that's just right, the 13.04. And for $8, $9 a motor, I mean, you can't beat that. There's some other good options. There's a Spintech 12.06 that a lot of people love. There's another 13.04. It might also be made by Spintech.
Nick, I'm going to interrupt you briefly. Sure. Nick Burns points out anything below 11.06 is very sensitive to weight.
Very sensitive.
I didn't want to let that comment go.
For sure. Very, very true. And then 3-inch prop, the smallest I'll go. So the other consideration, right, is all up weight. If it's a heavier all up weight, and right, what's heavy? after you build a bunch of them, you'll figure it out. Look at other people, ask other people questions.
That is important. I would say
Very important.
go to Rotorbuild. I like rotorbuilds.com.
Rotorbuilds is so good.
It's a website where people document their own builds, and it's a great, like I intend to do this, a great way to research a new field. And like weight is so important in these size classes. Go look at some of these guys' all-up weights and get a sense for how heavy the quads should be. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah. Easy rule of thumb, 100 grams or so for a 2-inch, 130-ish for a 2.5-inch, 160, and you can go up on a 3-inch because you can make big power on 3-inch, but
Yeah.
Rough guidelines, the toothpicks are a different thing entirely because they're super light and just terrific. But 3-inch prop, smallest motor I'll do is a 1306. That is 160 gram all up weight, like we were showing earlier. You start to get into like the Acrobrat, which is on your right.
Yeah.
Now you're pushing 200 plus grams. Now you need, and there's actually not a motor right now that I'm in love with for this, other than Tommy's Brat motor, which is you kind of can't get anymore, and it's really, really fragile, so I wouldn't recommend it.
Well, let's talk about let's talk about motor selection. So actually, back up.
Sure.
Let's talk about different design philosophy for 3 inches. So I think there's two different philosophies. One is like the Acrobrat, where you're intentionally going heavier and higher power motors to get a more heavy freestyle flingy 5-inch experience. And then there's the more sort of micro, where they're much lighter, smaller motors. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, for me, the frame, the weight of the frame, really designates what that build is going to be. The Acrobrat frame is, Tommy's going to kill me, 28 grams, 30 plus grams. I'll say 30 plus grams, I believe. Whereas something like this is a 20 gram frame. That makes a huge difference, right? Again, we talked about get 15 grams difference out of your head. 15 grams doesn't seem like a lot. Think of it in percentages.
Noah Reinhardt says the Acrobrat is almost 50 grams.
Is it really Noah? Noah's awesome.
Noah Reinhardt.
He's a great.
That's even heavier. That's even heavier.
Yeah. So that really, and it makes sense. It's a big frame. It was designed for the split at the time.
Right.
The split had double boards, so you didn't want 4 boards stacked up. That would have your CG really high.
Right.
So for that rig, it was okay. We've got this weight. We got to go to a bigger motor, and that's why.
Well, Tommy specifically wanted to emulate a 5-inch flight style.
Yep.
So he went heavy on purpose.
Yeah, and it worked really well. And also having to design around the clean dirty system,
right,
forced him to have those big long vertical carbon plates, which is where a bunch of that extra weight comes from.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot that went into that, but it's so interesting to fly that back to back with something that's like 40 grams less. Because again, you wouldn't think it's such a difference, but I mean it's night and day.
On something that small, 40 grams is a big difference.
And now with the dual lens cameras coming out, you kind of don't need a frame that's that heavy anymore unless you want that clean dirty setup, which is totally valid.
So let's talk about frames, because one of the questions that came in the Discord was, what do you think is a great frame for 3 inches? He's thinking about building an Armitage Gecko.
That's a great frame. The Gecko is a great frame. It's a little expensive, but it's a great frame. And I think that the front cage on the Gecko is going to be pretty much indestructible on a micro. I've never gone the Armitage route because I always thought those cages were a weak point. Who knows if they actually are, but on the micros, I think that's a great build. If you can stomach the $60, I think that frame is 50 or 60 bucks. For a micro frame, that's a lot, right? You can get micro frames for 15 bucks, 20 bucks.
There's just a lot less carbon there.
This is going to be a $25 frame once we're out.
What's this one?
This
This one isn't.
doesn't have a name yet.
You're prototyping this one.
Yeah, so I'm working on that with my frame sponsor, Rotorius.
Okay.
England company from England, really good stuff. So that's coming soon. It's a mini alien. There's a bunch of these. The X-Hover B-roll is a really good option if you want that alien style.
What's the one that Bachgrinder plugs? He has one he plugs, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's funny.
3AF.
Yeah, from the company up in New York.
BQE.
BQE.
So
Yeah.
Bachgrinder flies the BQE
with
3AF. Yeah. That's like a 3-inch alien, more or less.
A little bit heavier. I think the B-roll is a little bit lighter. Ours that we're doing is going to be quite a bit lighter from those.
Okay.
But they're great. They're going to be in the 30 gram ballpark, which is fine. A 1306 motor will haul that around absolutely fine and be a heck of a freestyle setup.
One of the guys in chat asked if 1306 motors are so freaking good, why are they so rare? Why can't you find them?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question.
No answer.
Micro motors are all very rare right now.
That's true.
Up until a year ago, there was no such thing as a 12.0 something, 13.0 something, 14.0 something. They just didn't exist.
Yeah.
So it's just been like throwing darts at the wall from what I can
One
tell.
of the things that stands out to me is like if you look at 5-inch quads, there have always been a relatively few motor sizes. Like there was 2303, and then 2204, and 2205, and now we kind of are in the 2306, 2207 era. But for micros, you're all the way down in the. I mean, you've got 07 and 08 motors for the little brushless whoops. Then you've got 2 inches, 2.5 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches. There's just the manufacturers can only make so many freaking motors.
Yeah, it's too much.
So,
and I mean, so how long have you been flying?
like 4 years, 5 years maybe.
So 4 years ago, what was the hot motor? Back when
The first hot motor that
Yeah.
I distinctly remember was the Sunny Sky 2203.
it was a 22.
22.
Really?
It was a 22, but that was. It used to be the 18. For a while, there were 1806s, and that was the hot motor
So there we
for
go.
5-inch.
Okay.
But
So
then the
that's-
Sunny Sky 2203 came out. It was like 2400 kV. That was like a $22 motor too.
So in my mind, right, that back then was when all the R&D was going on to figure all this stuff out, right? This prop, this 5-inch, 4 or 5-inch props, for whatever reason they like this motor. And over the last 4 years, there's been a ton of R&D done by the community on that prop size with which motor is going to be a really good match.
Exactly.
And with micros, it just hasn't happened. I mean, I've been trying really hard to do it over the last 2 years, but limited budget, one person. I mean, micros are viewed.
Somebody hire this guy.
Yeah, right.
Some micro manufacturer hire this guy to do an R&D for you. Clearly, he's UAV Tech asks, and I'm not sure if UAV Tech is asking you or asking another person in the chat, but he says, "Are you saying a 1300 motor on a 2.5-inch toothpick, not an 1100?"
That is a great question, Mark. The toothpick is the outlier because it is so light. But I hope I mentioned it at some point. The all-up weight of the rig has a lot to do with motor and prop selection. The toothpick being 70-something grams puts it in a completely different world where it can run and needs to be that weight. It needs to run an 1103, 1102 motor. So there's a point, on the sliding scale of weight to thrust,
Right.
and the toothpick is all the way on the bottom of that, minimal possible weight. For me, a toothpick is not durable enough, and they don't carry a HD cam
Right.
in any way that's
No.
gonna not explode when I
Right.
slam. And I personally crash a lot. I fly way beyond my skill level because that's how
the
I
beauty
get
of.
better fast.
Isn't that some of the beauty of micros?
Yeah.
Is you can crash them without as much fear.
Very much so.
They can be built so much more durably because they're
Yep.
so much lighter.
Yep. A lot of the guys that were new starting to fly that dove right into 5-inch when I was flying micros were like, dude, how are you getting so good so fast? It's like, well, every day when I get home from work, I fly 10 batteries off my deck in my parking lot.
Yeah.
And then I just slam into concrete and it doesn't matter. Turtle motor, well, there wasn't turtle motor back then, but
Right.
go out and get it and fly away and we'll be golden.
Right.
So that was another thing that really drew me towards micros, for sure.
Got a couple more super chats coming in. Random's House, thank you for $5. Just saying thanks. He built his first drone. Thank you. Want to get fly? Thanks for $2. No question. Joe Ryan paid $2 to tell everybody that his Acrobat is a tuning nightmare.
That is a great statement by Joe Ryan. Joe, what motors are on it? I will bet you the motors that are on it are very notchy. This is one of the biggest problems with micros. And Tommy's Brat motor, the Brat 1407 made by Rotorex, was, to my knowledge, the first freestyle geared micro motor. And when you take a motor and you spin it in your fingers when it's not powered, the notchiness of the motor doesn't have everything to do with the amount
You
of
can have
vibrations,
smooth
but
notchy motors.
You can.
They
but
can exist.
95% of the time, in my experience, a motor that when you spin with your fingers and it's notchy will put more vibrations into the system. Period. Point blank.
Here's my opinion about that, and I'm not a hardcore motor designer, but the notchier motors, I think, that tend to have the more powerful magnets.
Yep.
That makes the more powerful magnets makes them notchier, and as a result, if they are not driven perfectly precisely by the ESC, it'll kind of stutter and make vibrations.
The other thing I've noticed on
The
the micro
weaker
motors,
the weaker magnets
right?
are more forgiving
Yep.
of an ESC that doesn't perfectly drive the motor.
Yep.
They make less power, but they end up smoother.
And on micro
That's my
motors,
theory.
I've also noticed that though certain motors, like it'll be a big notch, like you'll rotate it like 20
Oh, yeah.
degrees, and that's when it'll stop. And those are the motors that I've had tons of issues with tuning. Whereas Tommy's motor, for example, and there are some new ones coming, they have stronger magnets, but they manage to make the notches a lot smaller. So you turn the motor like 5 degrees and it hits the notch, and
Yeah.
then 5 degrees and it hits
Does
the
that
notch.
have to do with
And
like the
that
number
seems
of
smoother.
poles?
I think it does, and I think it also has to do with like the orientation of the poles to the magnets, right? So if you can somehow kind of blend that in, I don't know. This is just me talking.
Yeah.
I have nothing to back
That's
this up.
what we're here for.
That's what I've seen in trying to tune micros, because
Yeah.
tuning micros is a complete nightmare. It's not just the Acrobat; it is just a nightmare to tune micros,
It goes-
especially for the split camera.
It goes back to something that I've said for a long time, and that is that it's a totally unfair thing to say, because everybody deserves a good flying quad, but 50%, maybe 80% of tuning is part selection. It doesn't mean you have to select expensive parts. I don't know about 80%, some percent, a big percent. Everybody just buys parts that they think work together, slaps them together, and then their quad flies bad, and they're like, what do I need to change about my tune?
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you pick the right parts to begin with, and I think this is 1,000 times more true with micros,
God, yeah.
if you pick the right parts to begin with, you'll have a great foundation, and you won't have to struggle as much with the tune.
When I build a micro and flash it to a stock, whatever, Betaflight 4, Betaflight 3.5, if on the Maiden it doesn't fly good, I take it apart and start changing mechanical pieces and looking for mechanical problems. If it doesn't fly good on a completely stock tune, even though Betaflight's stock tune is not meant for micros, but if it doesn't at least fly acceptable on a stock tune on the Maiden, pull it apart. It's a mechanical problem. You are not going to be able to tune around that.
Yeah, yeah. That's a little bit of a cheap answer. I hesitate with that answer, because if I responded to everybody who came to me and said I have a tuning problem by saying change your motors, that's not a great answer. I mean, some poor kid out there saved $40 to buy his first set of motors.
But how much money is it going to save him to change the motors now?
Yeah. What about? Let's talk about PIDs. There's guys. I see 1,000. There's a bunch of questions coming in. I'm answering fewer of them than usual because I'm having so much fun talking to you. I hope you guys are also really benefiting from this guy's smarts.
We'll do it again.
If I don't get to your questions, I hope you understand. Questions about PIDs. How do you find PIDs change between a 5-inch and like a 3-inch or a 2-inch?
Depends completely upon the motors. It is so motor specific. A big burly like 1606, which is what I've got on my Acrobat right now, I can drop the PIDs down a little bit. The smaller motors, the 1104, 1105s, the 1304s, I can crank the PIDs up from stock. So it really does depend, and it also, for me, it depends on how much headroom I have. I mean, is that tune clean enough to where I can crank the PIDs up, which, for the most part, if I can't get the PID tune right, it's coming apart.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a deal breaker.
Yeah.
If I can't get it to have the flight characteristics of a 5-inch rig, which is just, to me, that's just another way of saying it's perfect, right?
Yeah.
It slams to a stop and just sits there until it hits the ground.
Joe Ryan, thank you for another $2. Joe Ryan says his Acrobat has 1507 Avenger 4100 kV, T-Motor F20 ESC 3750, and Emax 1606. Wait, I got lost in there somewhere, but
Is that asking for a comparison?
No, I think he said my Acrobat's a tuning nightmare, and you asked him what motors he had.
Oh, you've run all three of those, Joe. Okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me that the Avenger was a problem. Those are very, very notchy. Brother Hobby motors are. They make humongous
Brother
power,
Hobby motors are so
but they're
notchy.
very notchy.
They're very racing motors.
Yep. T-Motor F20s, they should have been the best. My guess is going to be they were the best for you, but they're still a racing style motor. And then the Emax 1606s, can you grab that Acrobat for me?
Yeah. Emax 1606s?
They're what I have on here right now, and they had their last flight last week. They're coming off because same deal. They're
Joe-
just too much.
Joe says you're
Too
right.
much magnets.
You're right. The
Yep.
T-motors were the best.
Yep.
Isn't that nice? Isn't that a good feeling?
So yeah, I mean, it's the smoothness of the motor is for me everything with a micro. Trying to get remotely usable footage. If you're just ripping around the field, if you're not interested in HD, put a big motor on that makes huge power. It's so much fun to whale it 200 feet in the air in a half a second. But if you're going for freestyle, if you're trying to make the HD cameras that we've got available to us not have jello all over the place, you got to find a smooth motor, and there aren't many. But there are some coming.
I want to call out a particular manufacturer, which is somebody in the chat said this, so I'm just going to use it as an excuse to do it, because this is the manufacturer we decided to put on my Acrobat build. By the way, we'll talk about the frame in a second, but on my 3-inch build, I was talking to the guys at iFlight who make the Zing motors. Xing? Zing?
Zing, I think.
I say
Kabam
Zing.
says it's Zing. So
They make the iFlight Zing motors, and these are I'm just so impressed with these motors in all size classes. They're really decent motors at
I've
a
heard.
not a budget price, but not a premium price either. And we were talking about getting some of those iFlight motors for my 3-inch build, and you asked for a very specific size. Now they make a 1408, I think, and you didn't like the 4. You said we could make it work, but what's wrong with the 1408 for like a 3-inch Acrobat build?
08 is too much stator.
Too tall, too much
tall.
stator volume.
Too much power at the top of the throttle. So then you say, oh, well, I'll just put a throttle curve in. Okay, well, now you're dragging around extra grams on the ends of the
Extra
arms
weight.
for no reason. So what's the point of that, right? Let's wait. and
But wait,
get
what's
the
wrong?
right size
What's wrong
motor.
with too much power?
I
like
lose throttle
power.
resolution.
So-
And
Yeah.
at the bottom of your dives, the easiest way for me to tell it when I'm watching my footage back is if at the bottom of a dive I bounce up. I blame myself at this point because I should be better than that, but
No, you're right. You're
that's
so right.
an easy way to tell that you've got.
I flew a 5.5-inch prop and a 6-inch prop in the same week, and I struggle. Imagine a scenario where you're going to do a split S over a tree, and then as you come out the other side, you got to hit
right
a gap.
into the branches.
You got to hit a gap.
Yeah.
So you're going to come in blind
Yep.
over the tree, and you're going to have a very short period of time to see the gap, catch the throttle, and get out.
Yep.
And I always struggle with that. And what you end up doing is you come in and you go, here, I'll use this. You come around and you go, whoop, whoop. Oh, okay, there's my gap.
Yeah.
And that's not a good smooth
Yeah.
split S.
Yep.
And on these 5.5 and 6-inch props, it was like just like I felt totally in control.
Yeah.
That's that throttle resolution you're talking about.
Yep.
When you have an uber powerful big motor, you just don't get that.
Yep.
Also,
And-
you kill your batteries.
And that's the other thing. That is the big consideration with micro batteries because they just don't have my best friend in the world calls it pockets. It doesn't have the pockets to deliver that extra juice for a big motor, big power stator like that. Yeah. And it's
So what size motor did you said the size you really wanted for this 3-inch Acrobat build was?
So to take a tiny step back, we talked about the Acrobat frame. I know that's a heavy frame. I know that's going to be a 240 gram all-up build, 240 plus probably. So a 1306 was too small. We started talking about the 1408. It'll kind of
You
work.
could have made it work.
15, I think, is the correct stator width, and I think that a 1506 or a 1505 is the perfect sized motor for a freestyle 3-inch heavier build.
I had like a heavier freestyle style.
Yeah, the Emax 1606s are great, but they're too much. They're just.
Those are targeted for
bananas.
4-inch.
I think so.
They put the 1606s on
I think they're too small for
the Baby Hawks 4-inch. Well,
I think a 4-inch needs an 18
right.
or a 19 or a 20.
Yeah.
Because look at how it scales, right? Like 5-inch, 23 and 22, 4-inch, 18 or 19. That scales, right?
Yeah.
3-inch.
I will say this.
15.
I haven't flown the the Baby Hawk 4-inch enough. Is it a Baby Hawk? Anyway, the Emax 4-inch enough
Oh, it is.
to be able to say for sure. I will say Diatone released the M515,
Mm.
which was an 1806 5-inch biblade, and I felt like it flew okay, but the shafts bent too easily on that quad because they were 2mm shafts, I think.
Right.
And I was
That's
just
the
like,
other problem.
1806 biblades, that was okay 5 years ago, but not
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like
That's-
1806 is good size for a 4-inch, like a 4-inch tri-blade.
Yeah.
1606, you might be right about the Emax. I don't know.
It's a bit much for 2-inch, or for 3-inch rather. I could tell because I'd never hit KV limit on a motor before until that. I put a low pitch, 28 pitch, 3-inch prop, the Gem Fan 3028. And on those 1606s at the top of the throttle, it would just have this weird frequency oscillation, and it was the motors hitting the top of their KV. It
Interesting.
was the first time I'd ever experienced
Top
that
of
like, KV limit.
Yeah.
I guess it's called. People call
Yeah.
it.
Okay, so I went back to iFlight and I said, and now I'm spilling the beans, and I hope iFlight doesn't get mad at me. But I said, hey iFlight, the guy, my 3-inch guy says he'd love a 1506. Do you make that? And I expected him to say no, but hey, you can't hurt but ask.
Sure.
And they were like, well, actually, in about 2 or 3 weeks, we should have one of those out. And I was like, oh. And then you've been like hitting me up every couple days. Is it out yet? Is it out yet? Because you really like that for a 3-inch.
Yeah.
Huh?
And then I got a surprise in the mail today, which I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about.
Well, I don't want to get you in trouble.
I guess
But-
I can do this.
What is this? What is that? Are you not
So
going to
show
say?
you
You're not going to
before.
say.
I don't know if I can.
It's your call.
What?
It's your call.
Yeah, they're coming.
The
Freestyle micro motors are coming.
1506 freestyle micro motors are coming.
Not that size.
Oh,
Different
what?
size.
They're different size.
Still good size though.
So why did you pick?
Ciotti approved size.
I asked you what 3-inch frame should I get. I just tell me what to get, and you told me the Acrobat's pretty good.
Yeah, because I know you're gonna want to make footage with it. And
Oh,
the clean, dirty setup of the Acrobat is gonna give you the best chance of pulling clean footage out of the very jello-prone options that we've got.
okay.
So, I'm crazy and try to do it on the smaller ones that I can get down to 160 grams because they are silent and you can fly them anywhere without getting, any dirty looks. The Acrobat, you're fine 98% of the time, but there will be 2% of the time where that Acrobat is making a little bit more noise than Joe Blow down the street wants to tolerate, and he's going to yell and scream.
Sorry, I'm answering questions in the chat.
1506. Oh, that's you. I just read your comment.
Let's see here. Let me check back in the Discord. Let's see if any questions have come in that I can get. Let's see. How about Cinewhoops? You flown Cinewhoops? You know anything about Cinewhoops?
So that's why the session mount is on that Acrobat. I toyed with the idea. Well, so with the bigger motors, these motors were just way too much for the RunCam split setup on this. So I figured, well, okay, Joe Stan, I think it is, has 3-inch ducts that you can put on there. So I figured I would try it with the session mount on it as a Cinewhoop. It's not my style of flying. I just can't control myself. I fly like that for 15 seconds and I get rammy and try to throw it up over something.
It doesn't work real well.
I just don't have the patience for it.
Yeah.